I am a sucker for poetry, for eloquent prose. What can I say? It titillates my soul. And a poem, a proverb, was pounded into my head as I was growing up. That's Proverbs 22, verse 1, where it says, "A good name is to be desired more than wealth, and a reputation is better than silver and gold." And this was pounded into my head because I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, where one of the most important things about that organization is their reputation. They will destroy families by disfellowshipping them, shunning to keep their reputation. All of it is predicated on having that prestigious name. We are God's people. Now, someone sent me something yesterday that was this beautiful, organic poetry in motion. It didn't need an author. It just existed and was beautiful. Something I have been talking about on this channel for quite some time is Watchtower's ongoing legal battles in Norway. And one of the things that I've talked about, I mentioned it was a bit of a hot take and probably still is, but the exact dollar amount of money that they were losing, the subsidies from the Norwegian government, those kroners, weren't really as valuable to Watchtower as their good name, their reputation. And boy howdy, I think Watchtower is learning that lesson very quickly. So let's talk about it. Well, it appears Watchtower's reputation is disappearing faster than my hairline. It's almost comical, but if you put on your thinking cap, you could kind of see it happen. So back when I was talking about the Norway thing, I suggested that, the 100 million kroners that they were getting from the Norwegian government really didn't matter in the grand scheme of things, because when other countries saw what's been happening there and it's brought to light, their reputation, someone puts a spotlight on it, and they see, oh wait, Watchtower has these policies, well, those also violate some of our laws that we have. So we're going to do an investigation. It's going to put Watchtower in this constant decade-long cycle of fighting these legal battles, or they'll have to put their tail between their legs and change their policy. Those are kind of their options. So we have some good news coming from the Czech Republic, and I guess we can just start off right away with an announcement that was made to all congregations. Threat of deregistration. In recent months, the branch office has learned about steps being taken by independent divisions of churches and religious organizations under the Ministry of Culture of Czech Republic, which could lead to the deregistration of our legal entity NSSJ. I enjoy how they're like, there's these independent divisions of these churches. The thing that actually matters is whether or not you're violating the law. It doesn't matter who's pointing a spotlight at it. That's irrelevant to the point. They're just trying to make it seem like it's this conspiracy against them. Oh man, these other churches and everything, they're trying to get us. It's ridiculous what they're saying about us. You wouldn't believe it. Where in the reality of the situation is what the government cares about is, do you or do you not violate the policies? Plain and simple, easy. And we can all just go on and have a coffee and move on with the rest of our day. But Watchtower wants to make it seem to their people that there's this almost conspiratorial aspect. At least that's how I read it. This is translated, so take that for what you will. The government states that some principles of our teachings, including 1, the application of biblical principles such as abstaining from blood in cases where parents decide about minor children, and 2, the application of Bible principles to limit social contact with those who have been disfellowshipped or who have disassociated themselves from the congregation, are problematic. Now, this is something that I've talked about before, but I want to talk about it again just because it's relevant. Are these really biblical principles? If you don't care why shunning isn't biblical and how you can easily disprove that in about, 4 or 5 minutes, then wait, I can't remember how I started. If you want to know about that, stick around. If you don't, fast forward about 5 minutes. I'm going to talk about some Bible stuff. So there you go.
Sometimes I'll start a sentence and I don't even know where it's going. I just hope I find it along the way. Like an improv conversation. Improvisation.
So they add the scripture here of 1 Corinthians 5:11. Now, Watchtower, they aren't big fans of context in anything, But I think I would like to give a little bit of context to this just so we can have a realistic idea of what the Bible was actually talking about. So let's start in verse 9. In my letter, I wrote you to quit mixing in company with fornicators, not meaning entirely with fornicators of this world, or the greedy persons and extortioners or idolaters. Otherwise, you would actually have to get out of the world. But now I am writing you to quit mixing company with anyone called a brother, that is a fornicator, or a greedy person, or an idolater, or a reviler, or a drunkard, or an extortioner, not even eating with such a man. For what do I have to do with judging those outside? Do you not judge those outside, while God judges those outside? Do you not judge those inside, while God judges those outside? Remove the wicked man from among yourselves. So, what is the overall context of what this scripture is exactly talking about? Because if Watchtower wants to stand on business and say this is biblical, then they need to actually be a little bit more aggressive with their shunning policy. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, it says, okay, anyone that's a fornicator. So if you have sex with someone that you're not married to, you're a fornicator. So boom, get out. But it also says a greedy person. How are we going to quantify a greedy person? The Greek word here just means someone that is trying to attain more. Is Watchtower someone that's trying to attain more? You don't have to even be wealthy to be a greedy person. It could just be the very desire of that. There are plenty of greedy people within the organization. Should they also be disfellowshipped on the spot? Has anyone ever heard of anyone being disfellowshipped for greed? I know I haven't. I'm sure there's at least one out there, but proportionally, it seems like most people have been disfellowshipped for fornication and no one for greed. So that's a bit of a strange one. Here's one that bothered me while I was a Jehovah's Witness, because it mentions an idolater. So someone worshiping an idol. Now, I was in Seattle during the heyday of the Seattle Seahawks, the Legion of Boom. Russell Wilson, he was the second coming of Jesus Christ himself. Not gonna lie, some people thought he used to look like Russell Wilson. Wasn't true at all, but anyway. When all of that was happening, there were Jehovah's Witnesses that were hanging flags outside their houses with Seattle Seahawk symbol on it. And even from their cars. So they were driving around and up on both sides of their cars, there's big Seattle Seahawk flags. They were stuff on their cars, the whole kit and caboodle, having Seahawks parties. Everyone was decked out in their gear. And I legitimately, maybe I was a precocious, annoying Jehovah's Witness, but I genuinely was asking why none of this is being dealt with judicially. This is so blatantly, obviously idol worship. And not only that, but during their watch parties or going to the game, they would also violate another one of these laws, where it says anyone who's considered a drunkard. Again, how many people are disfellowshipped, kicked out of the congregation for being a drunkard? Now, another point that needs to be mentioned here is a lot of times when people will see this, they'll say, well, a drunkard means someone has a pattern of it. You know, if they might slip up now and again, but it's not really a problem. They got drunk once or twice. Not that big of a deal, right? Well, then couldn't you also say that about a fornicator? Well, how many times does one have to fornicate to be a fornicator? Because if you're saying that in order to be a drunkard, you have to get drunk X amount of times, or there has to be this pattern, couldn't you say the exact same thing about being a fornicator? And again, if you look at the actual data, Watchtower, you have this data, no doubt, because you know exactly all of the reasons. How many times are people not kicked out for getting drunk? How often does that happen? And it's totally fine. And yet you have a different measuring stick for fornication. It's not consistent. You're not actually going by what the Bible is saying. And then it mentions being a reviler or an extortioner, not even eating with such a man. Now tell me, us galaxy-brained human beings here, where does anywhere in this say anything about simply not wanting to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore? Is there any way that you could interpret this scripture and say, yes, not even eating with such a man, that applies to someone that just steps away from the congregation? And remember, it says specifically, you're not judging those on the outside. So people that aren't in the congregation anymore. So if someone wants to disassociate himself and no longer be a part of the congregation, in the scripture, it says that God judges those outside, not you. So isn't it the exact opposite of what the Jehovah's Witnesses practice? Doesn't the scripture actually say that, no, you're not supposed to be shunning your family? How could anyone go and say, God is the one judging those on the outside, so therefore I should never talk to my brother, my sister, or my mom and dad, or my grandparents because they decided they no longer wanted to be a Jehovah's Witness? That extrapolation is ridiculous. If Watchtower wants to say, no, this is a biblical principle and we're just a religion, we are exercising our right to interpret the Bible. This is such an insane interpretation that I don't see anyone looking at that verse that they quote in the scripture and saying, yeah, the way the Jehovah's Witnesses practice that biblical verse is consistent with the actual message of it. Now, what someone might say to that is, well, what about 2 John? Well, you know what? Let's take a look at 2 John because, again, context matters. So the other verse that Watchtower will roll out whenever it comes to shunning is in 2 John verse 10. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, never receive him into your homes or say a greeting to him. See, if someone's not a Jehovah's Witness, we don't even say hello to him. But is that what's actually going on here? What is this verse? Well, if you look at the beginning of 2 John, you'll notice that it's written to an older man or an elder, a presbyteros, and that it's written to this lady and her children. I think in some translations, it even gives her a name, Kyria, something like that. Anyway, so it's written to a woman and her children through this elder, and it's advice that John ostensibly is giving to her. Now, let's read the full context here just so we have a grasp on what actually he's saying. Look out for yourselves that you do not lose the things we have worked to produce, but that you may obtain full reward. Everyone that pushes ahead and does not remain in teaching of the Christ does not have God. He that does not remain in this teaching is the one that has both the Father and the Son. If anyone comes to you and does not bring him this teaching, never receive him into your homes or say a greeting to him. Now, say a greeting to him is not the greatest translation. I'll get into that in a second, though. For he that says a greeting to him is a sharer in his wicked works. So this was advice that there was a problem within early Christianity where people were taking advantage of Christian hospitality. The issue that whoever is writing this is trying to get or trying to bring to light is that there are people that are saying, oh man, I'm a Christian, I'm out here on my mission, I'm trying to spread the good word. Do you think you could let me stay here? Do you think you could let me have a meal with you? They were basically trying to hoodwink people out there, and he was writing this in order to protect them. There is a biblical commentary, I think the pulpit commentary, that breaks this down well. It is of the utmost importance to remember that St. John is here giving a rule for a special case, not laying down a general principle. His words give no sanction to the view that no hospitality is to be shown to heretics, still less to the monstrous medieval doctrine that no faith need be kept with them. The apostle is giving directions to a particular Christian household during a particular crisis in the history of the Christian faith. It by no means follows that he would have given the same direction to every household during that crisis, or to any household under totally different circumstances. This is a particular problem for a particular time, for a particular family. that's being talked about here. So how are you going to say that, 2,000 years later, this still applies? Do you think he would have wrote to that woman and said, hey, even if one of your children says they're not sure about being a Christian, you should kick them out of the house? And if that was the message, if that was biblical, why would it not be more clear? The Bible has no issue with saying things very clearly, like kick out the drunks, kick out the fornicators, kick out the greedy persons. Boom. Super simple, clean. There's no ambiguity to it. Yet why on this shunning and disfellowshipping do you have to stretch your wildest imagination in order to come to that conclusion? So sorry, Watchtower, your policies are not biblical. They just aren't. And it's crazy that they sit there and say, well, our religion, protects our religion. Yeah, but if your religious beliefs can be interpreted, or you use the Bible to interpret things in such a way that it's harmful to other people, you still fall under the authority of the law. Sorry, you can't just take any scripture in the Bible and say, oh, look, this says that it's okay to beat people, and then just go walking around hitting them with hockey sticks. You can't do that and say, no, but God gave me the right. Don't you see this Bible verse that says never spare the rod? And so any child I see, I just whip out a stick and start beating them. Anyway, I'm getting excited. What I'm trying to say is that you're not going to find any rational person that can read the verses that Watchtower uses to establish their rules and operations with disassociation specifically and disfellowshipping, because nowhere in here is it talking about someone that just wants to walk away or is unsure of their faith or who just doesn't want to call himself a brother. Then that judgment would not be up to the individual person. It would be up to God. Therefore, the church would have no say in it. So Watchtower, stop it. Get some help. And back to this letter. A decision on the deregistration of an SSJ could mean that we lose the ability to organize assemblies and conventions legally, as well as other rights, such as performing marriage ceremonies or preaching in prisons. Yeehaw. It could also mean that kingdom halls, assembly halls, and other religious property in the Czech Republic would be confiscated and transferred to the state. Such a step would likely result in disputes over basic human and legal rights and court rulings concerning freedom of religion and belief. So they are really sounding the alarm bells with this one. They might go full blown and confiscate our property and whatever other religious, they say kingdom halls and assembly halls and other religious property. So whatever else they own that they consider religious property, might be confiscated. Clearly, Watchtower is pretty worried, and I just have to laugh. Watchtower, Proverbs 22:1, man. Maybe instead of pugnaciously and stubbornly saying you're never going to change your policies when Norway called them into question, you should have protected your reputation, because I think it's going to end up costing you a whole lot more money in the long run. But they don't really have a lot of forward thinking or foresight with any of this. Written complaints to state representatives. The branch is currently taking steps to defend against the threat of deregistration and maintain our legal status. We are asking each congregation to send written complaints to state representatives on this matter. Please write to state representatives to express your concern about the threat of deregistration of NSSJ and to emphasize 1. The importance of religious freedom. 2. The injustice of confiscating property. That is on the second on their list. Wow, that's crazy. 3. The Ministry of Justice. 4. The Ministry of Culture. 5. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs. 6. The State Division of Churches and Religious Societies of the Ministry of Culture. Each representative should receive a polite letter. So they are going to engage in a letter writing campaign to bring these issues up to the government or to their state representatives. Now, why is there a big old smile on my face? Well, Again, I like poetry. I like when people can't look down the road and see what's ahead of them. They just hold on to the gas and they don't pump the brakes at all because they didn't stop and think about, or maybe they did. Who knows? But let's take a look at what the law actually says and why I think it's actually crazy to do a letter writing campaign. So the requisite law that is being discussed here is a church or religious society whose teaching or activity pursues the violation of the law or the achievement of a goal in an illegal way cannot be established and carried out, especially if it restricts personal freedom of persons, in particular by using psychological or physical coercion to create dependence, which leads to physical, psychological, or economic harm to such persons or family members, to damage their social ties, including by restricting their psychological development of minors, by restricting their right to education, or by preventing minors from receiving health care adequate to health needs. So the question is, are Jehovah's Witnesses using psychological coercion to create dependence? Hey, you know what would signal that everything's totally cool here and fine? Is if we instruct them to make a letter writing campaign and we tell them what to say. That will prove that this isn't a cult. That will prove that they're not under any type of coercive situation when the government sees that our little followers did exactly what we told them in the way when we told them to do it. Clearly, that will demonstrate to the state representatives that they are not being coerced at all. And I'm positive that the state representatives are this smart, but I guess I'll say it anyway, just to put it out there in the universe. Not a single Jehovah's Witness would have done this without being told by Watchtower. Why? Well, if they saw this come up on the news, if they heard about this evil plot to deregister the Watchtower's legal companies, a Jehovah's Witness would never think that the right thing to do was to get politically involved and do a letter writing campaign to a state representative, because they would associate that with getting involved in politics. And something you're not allowed to do as a Jehovah's Witness is get involved with politics. Yes, I'm telling you, they would never, of their own autonomous thought, write to a local representative asking that a legislative action be taken or not taken because of fear of the organization punishing them. The organization would punish them if they found out that they were getting involved in politics. So if the organization will punish them for getting involved with politics, unless the organization tells them to get involved in this specific area of politics. That is one of the greatest signs of psychological coercion and dependence and the fear that they will damage social ties that I can think of. That's why I think it's funny that they're doing this, because it's an actual demonstration of the problem. By doing this letter writing campaign, you are showing the government that these people are under your control, because it's not something they would do by themselves, and it's only on your instruction, and you would punish them for doing it if they did it by themselves. Get your head around that and tell me how they haven't thought of this. It makes no sense. And then the other one that's just is pretty rough out there for Watchtower. I just did a whole video. I know only like 12 people watched it, but about education. It was a deep dive video. It was an hour long. Maybe it was too long. Anyway, including by restricting the psychological development of minors or restricting their right to education. Looks like this question of are Watchtower going to be changing their policies with regard to education that I brought up, maybe we're going to be seeing that sooner rather than later. Hi, Editing Wally here. A little sweaty after the gym, but that's okay. I just wanted to make something abundantly clear, and that is to anyone that plans on writing their own letter or experience with Jehovah's Witness teachings and policies in this regard to any of those representatives. Make sure you highlight this aspect, that these are not authentic, autonomous reviews and experiences that they are receiving or being flooded with by the Jehovah's Witness people. Because Watchtower, the organization, has told them to do this. And unless they told them to do it, they would never have done it because they would fear being punished by the organization for getting in politics. Also, it must be noted that this is the equivalent of a scammer trying to use bots or paying people to give positive reviews of a scam product in order to flood the homepage so people say, oh man, it has 1,000 5-star reviews, but only 100 1-star reviews. Trying to get to drown out the people, the 100 people that say, oh man, let me tell you what the truth is about this organization and how it's affected me and my family and how it's been going on for generations. They don't want you to see those reviews, and so they're trying to flood the government with all of these fake, botted, paid for, incentivized reviews. This is a scammer trying to perpetuate their scam by using their drone-like followers. So if your concern is that this organization, the Jehovah's Witnesses, creates a dependency, I really want to let you know just how deep it goes, and here is a perfect example of how that's happening right before your very eyes. Anyway, so if you plan on doing that, just a little pro tip. You don't have to listen to me. I'm just a little goober, but I think it's probably an important thing to make mention of. So I think all of this stems from Norway. I think they created a blueprint. I think they had a very good understanding of Watchtower's policies, and they didn't listen and haven't listened to any of Watchtower's nonsensical nonsense that they are always bringing up where they blatantly lie or obfuscate the truth. They have done a phenomenal job, thusly, in countering all of Watchtower's arguments. And when other countries are looking at that, and they say, wait, the Jehovah's Witnesses do that? Wait, that's what the Jehovah's Witnesses practice? And we have them as a legal charity? We actually give them subsidies? They have tax-free status? Oh, no, they don't anymore. So Watchtower, Proverbs 22:1, a good name is to be desired better than great wealth, and a reputation is better than gold and silver. So shout outs to all of the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses around the world that are raising these issues and bringing to the attention all of these problems within the governments. I think you guys are all doing a phenomenal job. And it's, well, you know what? That's actually another bit of poetry, prose. I don't know. It reminded me of a Francis Bacon quote. So if you like Wally quotes, here's one for you. I don't remember it off the top of my head. Honor that is gained and broken upon another hath the quickest reflection, like diamonds cut with facets, and therefore let a man contend to excel any competitors in his honor, in outshooting them if he can in their own bow. Discreet followers and servants help much to reputation. Omnis fama a domestics eminent, which is a Latin quote from Cicero, meaning all fame emanates from the domestics. Watchtower forgot that very important principle because for years, for decades, those pompous, holier-than-thou, claiming that they were the ones going to heaven, ruling over the rest of Jehovah's Witnesses, they called all of us domestics. We were just domestics to them. But they forgot that their fame and reputation relies on us domestics. Beautiful poetry in motion. Stay safe, be kind, and remember to love the things you love more than you hate the things you hate. And have a good-ass day.